Hello. Let's talk about something pretty important. Important to me, anyway. And the reason I want to share this video the way that I'm going to is because I would like those that would like to work with me to know that these are the concepts, this is the approach, this is the sort of vehicle that we may be using to get to where we want to go. And the service that I provide is that I can assist in getting to where we want to go, and meaning I would be the one to help facilitate the navigation of what I'm about to present. Okay? So if you find this information helpful for yourself in your own way and you don't need my assistance, I'm so glad, because I really feel like this is something where just sort of sets us free when we utilize the understandings that I'm about to present, and I would like everyone to be free. And I don't need to be the facilitator of that. It's just that that is what I'm offering as a service and a way that I can contribute to humanity at this time. So, if you've watched a lot of my videos in the past, you know that I talk a lot about coping mechanisms and doing the shadow work, doing the work, the steps it takes to get out of those coping mechanisms. And so I'm still going to be talking along those lines. However, I'm going to use different words because I'm really going to present this in a bigger picture view. Okay? Whereas before, a lot of the times I was focused in on details and singular experiences, I've now had the pleasure of an expansion of awareness, which allows me to describe it in a way that has a bigger picture view. Okay, so I had some dreams last night that really kind of spelled things out for me and showed me where I was at in my own journey. And when I applied what I learned about my own self to this concept, it just felt right. It felt like this was a useful piece of information that would allow me to move through any of those blocks that I had in place that were shown to me in the dream state. So what I would like to say is the coping mechanisms, and in case you haven't heard me talk about coping mechanisms before, I'll talk a little bit about that. When I've referred to coping mechanisms, what I've said that is that as we go through life and have experiences, sometimes we can't fully process or understand what we're experiencing, or sometimes we are overwhelmed in emotion or confused by emotions that arise. And when that happens, we can often develop a strategy in our operating system, otherwise known as a coping mechanism, that will allow us to navigate that situation in the future with what we perceive as little pain or confusion or discomfort as possible. Sometimes that strategy involves avoiding that thing altogether. Sometimes that strategy involves overcompensating and going in the opposite direction of that thing. And sometimes it's an avoidance or a suppression mechanism that is enacted. And the way that it's supported is by the story we tell ourselves. Like, we make an assessment of the situation, and then we decide what to do about it. So in that decision that we make, at the moment we're also lodging that unprocessed emotion, the overwhelming emotion, in our bodies. It's anchoring in the story that we're telling about it, the perception we have about the experience. So then we also may have other people involved in the experience, or people that had the experience with us, or people that advise us about the experience that become contributing factors to anchoring that story in place. Like if we seek out justification for our own actions and we receive it from someone outside of ourselves, we may have that reassurance that this is the appropriate way to handle this as like a little voice in our head. Meaning when we activate, when this coping mechanism is active, we remember that so-and-so approves of this and they would do it this way too. Therefore, I feel justified in that this is the appropriate way. That's an example of a supporting kind of piece of information, outside influence that can come in to support what this coping structure is, which is based on a lodged emotion and a story we're telling ourselves. So in that way, it's a whole system, right? I've called it a mechanism because it feels like there's some moving parts in it, right? But in this way, I'm going to equate it to a system. And also, I can also call it an overlay, because when this system is activated, when the coping mechanism is activated, it also filters our view, because what we're seeing life through is the veil of the story that we've told and the supporting information that we have about what we've experienced. So maybe it's that when someone does something certain, we discredit them automatically and think they're idiots. We call them losers, and we walk the other way. And now, whenever somebody does something specific like that, we automatically see them as a loser. We just have that story that kind of pops up, and what it is a coping mechanism. And what it is a system that is engaged to navigate a certain experience that we deemed this is the appropriate way to experience it. Now, these are all in the subconscious, so we're not consciously thinking, oh, this is the appropriate way to experience it. It's just based on maybe like the first experience we had of it, or the environment, how it showed us it should be. Some previous time is when we downloaded this kind of way to navigate this experience. This overlay, the system is now overlaying our whole life, and we are experiencing life through that overlay. So when I come up upon someone who's doing that same old action and I automatically see them as a loser, what I'm doing is I'm seeing them through the lens, the filter that I have put in place for my own self in order to help me navigate life. Now, let's suspend all that for a moment, that whole topic, and then just step outside of ourselves for a moment to see that actually when we encounter somebody who's doing that certain thing, and we might have what we have a name for them called a loser, like we are just seeing a glimpse of that person, their experience, and maybe we know some things about why they're doing it, and maybe we don't. Either way, even if we know a lot about why they're doing it, even if we have all these justifications in our mind about why we're right that they're a loser, we don't actually know everything about their experience, and we don't know if we were in their shoes if we wouldn't have acted the same way, because we're not in their shoes. All we are doing is making an overlay. We're reinforcing our own overlay to see things through. And it is going to limit us, because there will be that time that we are labeling someone a loser when we've really just made a misconception about an assessment about their situation, which is also false, which doesn't have enough information to make that assessment. But because it's our operating system, it's our overlay, we're going to see it somewhere because it's filtering our view. And when we're activated in that system, that coping mechanism, that is what we will see. Because it's a misunderstanding in the first place, because it's a lodged, uncomfortable emotion that hasn't been processed through in a healthy way in the first place, it is going to continue to play out until we become conscious of it, till we realize that we are operating in it with a filtering view, which is covering the truth, which is the biggest picture view. And when we can discover that we are in an overlay, that is where our work is. That's where we take responsibility for that in ourselves, okay? All right, let me just look at my notes for a second and see that I've not missed any important topic. One moment. So the overlay is activated when we are in a certain experience, because that's what the overlay is for. The coping mechanism is for dealing with that experience. And when it happens, it will happen repeatedly. So you'll notice you have a pattern of doing this in life. Oh, when I'm in this situation, this always happens. When I'm about to finish the race, I always trip. You know, when I go to a job interview, I always say the wrong thing, even though I'm fully capable and even though I've practiced several times. You know, whatever the overlay is, the experience that you're having from the environment is what's reminding you to put it into play. Now, what if you realize all this, so that when you realize that you're in a pattern, a repeating pattern of, I'm experiencing this scenario again, this system is engaged again, I see the same view again, I have this same strange feeling or strange effects in my behavior again. What if you realize that what you're in is sort of like an escape room? And now, this experience, because the first time you dealt with it, you didn't quite escape the room, now it serves as an escape room, and it's set itself up so that you will learn what you need to learn from it. So if you treat it like it is an escape room, first of all, you're going to acknowledge it. Oh, I'm in an escape room because I feel I'm stuck in this pattern again. This always happens. I always want to drink when I get home from work. You're in an escape room. What are you going to do now that you're in this escape room? There's some things to notice, right? I've never been in an escape room. That I've seen them played out on television and people have told me about them, but I've never been in, a physical one in the 3D. But I know that what you do is you assess the situation, you look for clues, you try to understand what it is that you need to do to get out of the room. What's going to open the door, what's important here. There's a lot of information to sift through, right? Okay, so that's kind of the mindset I want to invite us to take in order to navigate this overlay, this coping mechanism. Okay, and the reason that I want to do it this way is because it's very respectful of the coping mechanism and the overlay in the system itself. It's a wonderful thing that we've devised a way to navigate, right? It's a wonderful thing that we are now engaging ourselves in the process of our own growth and learning, of our own graduation through life. So, escape can be achieved by acknowledging, right? Okay, I'm in an escape room. Understanding and accepting, like, okay, well, what is it that I need to understand here? What is it about? Why is this here? Accept that it's here. Accept that I'm in an escape room. And I'm not going to escape unless I do the thing. I have to take responsibility for this escape room. It's no one's fault, even if they locked me in, right? Even if someone else locked me in, it is still my responsibility and I can still escape this room, right? Even if somebody else always seems to be the perpetrator of our overlay or our coping mechanism, we are still able to take responsibility from within this escape room, okay? Because it's our pattern. Because we've noticed it as a pattern, we can take responsibility for it. And then we're going to need to know, now while you're in that escape room, you're going to have a moment where you might feel scared or confused or like the other people in the room aren't working together with you towards the same goal. You might feel alone even though you're with a group of people, or you might be alone. What do you feel though? That's the next thing to notice. After you've accepted that you're there, acknowledged, accepted that you're there, understood why you're there, you can do all that, and then you have to notice how you feel. Because how you feel in this escape room is literally the key that's keeping you there. It's the key to your door. Once you are present and able to be loving towards yourself despite the feeling you're having, so I feel scared that then I can't escape, okay? I love myself even though I'm scared. My fear is welcome to be present with me. I'll take care of it. Me, the one who has handled everything I've handled up to this point in my life, I welcome in this fear. I love myself, and I love the part of me that feels this fear. I understand why this fear is scary. I understand why I've been seeing things the way that I have. You know, these kind of things. Like, it's definitely doing it in your own way, but you must be present with the feeling. If you feel the feeling, you don't have to talk to it, but just be there with it. Don't try to escape it. In those moments, before you escape this room, you've got to sit with the key. And the key is to be present with the emotion. And it might not be comfortable. There might not be a place to sit down with it, right? You're going to have to stand there and be with it, whatever it is, for however long it needs. You could pretend that the feeling is a little fairy. The feeling is a little... Let's do a cup of water. I don't know. Yes, let's make the feeling a cup of water. And it's like you need to make a container for it. So there's just water, and it's like, okay, I need this water. I need this water to be with me. Maybe I'm going to drink it. Maybe I'm going to hold it. Maybe I'm going to put it with my heart. Maybe I'm going to ask it what it needs. You know, water, what can I do to have you stay with me and be with me and be taken care of by me? Water, will you be present with me? I love the idea of imagining the feeling as water, but you also have to be present with the feeling. So you can't just do this through imagery. Maybe you can do this through imagery, to be honest, because I'm going to talk about that next step that I came to in a moment. Okay. Leave behind pride and use courage to leap into freedom. So if you have pride, meaning if I let go of this, so-and-so, Sally and Bob both told me that they agreed with me. And now if I let go of this, they're going to think I'm wrong. They're going to think I'm stupid. Or I already told people that this is my stance. And I don't want them to think that I waver on my word. So I'm going to stick with this. Or I know that the world is against me. So this is just the way it is. Poor me. Any of these things are pride. And those will hold you back. You need to let those things go and step into courage. And the courage is when you decide to leave this overlay, escape this room. It's going to take courage because when you step out of the room, now you're in a situation where you haven't navigated this before and you don't have a prescribed way of doing so. You're in the unknown. So you're going to want to be strong within yourself to navigate the unknown. So before you do these processes, or as you're doing these processes, what you're going to need to do is know yourself. And the 3 things that I found very helpful in order to know myself enough to navigate the unknown is my strengths, my weaknesses, and my values. What am I really good at? What am I still working on? And what is important to me? Because when I know these things about myself and I'm in the unknown, now I'm much more comfortable navigating. Now I'm like in the child mindset again. Now curiosity can lead me and I can be present with what is, with this bigger picture view of the situation because I've not closed myself in through an overlay. There's not like a coping mechanism trying to run the show and keep me from harm. Now I am present with life. I'm free. So this, what I've described to this point, I'm certain is a procedure that will assist with escaping these overlays. The next part that I'm going to mention is something more experimental that I'm just getting into myself. It combines something else that I've learned along the way and tried with this. And I'm going to continue to do it and maybe try it with a client and see where we end up. But I'm going to share it first. So, because I have a feeling it's going to work, you know? I'm pretty sure. It's good stuff, okay? Okay, so you use your courage to leap into the freedom, which will also involve a new experience where no overlay is present because we are being the presence. Okay, we got that. There's a visual aid that may assist the subconscious to do most of the work for us. So this is, we must assess whether all mechanisms in the system agree to escape from the overlay. So you're in the escape room, you've realized it, this is a pattern. Now, yes, you're going to sit with that emotion because emotion definitely, the feelings that are associated with this experience need to be on board in order to pass through the door. But there may be other things in there that need to be on board too. Like if you had a prideful stance that says, oh, I don't want to be seen as someone who's wishy-washy, so I'm not going to change my mind. Oh, well, you're going to have to talk to pride and you're going to have to see what pride needs to come on board. So make sure all parts of this system, this whole overlay, is on board with escape of the overlay. Because it's like if your overlay was smoking cigarettes, right? You picked up smoking cigarettes. This is what you do. You do it at certain times when you get a certain feeling. It's your environment. You don't maybe realize anymore, but your environment is the thing that's causing you to activate that overlay, that coping mechanism, right? So now you've decided that you want to quit smoking because you've noticed it's really a detrimental pattern that you've been stuck in for a while. You want to quit smoking, but there's just like part of you that keeps sabotaging you. Every time you try to go out the door, something goes, oh, just have one last cigarette. You know, it's a voice, right? It's like a supporting voice to the system, to the overlay. Now, instead of trying to walk out the door and ignore that voice, stay in the room with the voice. Talk to the voice. Ask it about itself. What does it need? Why is it there? Accept that it's there. Don't ignore it, because you can have a little conversation with it and explain to it. You could even show it in your mind, a visualization, whatever works for you, whatever your way of communicating with yourself and energy is, would be the appropriate method to do so. So it could be imagination, it could be words, it could be thoughts. It could be showing them the feeling, showing that part of you the feeling of having lungs that don't hurt anymore, you know? Okay, so you're trying to go out the door. There's a part of you. You want to make sure all parts are on board. Ask all the parts for presence. Satisfy unwilling or not defiant parts. You got to satisfy them. What do they need? Give them what they need. Maybe it's reassurance, which will be a process of accepting them for the role they played. Like, you know, you're not saying you're terrible, you led me down this road. They're there for a reason, and all of it's there for a reason. And all of it's there with your best interest in mind, even if you outgrow the process of what that best interest once was, you know? Assure them of the overall goal. Like, okay, well, we're trying to do this so that we can live a longer life and that we can save money for a trip and that the whole body will feel healthier and happier to be here. You know, something like that along those lines, right? And ask that part, the defiant parts, the unwilling parts, to assist with future discernment, given the wisdom they have from the experience they healed from. So like now when I go in the future, I'm going to need you. You know what it's like to want to smoke cigarettes. So I'm going to need you to pay attention and navigate me and discern me on topics like that. Like if someone is blowing smoke in my face, I'd like you to kind of say, hey, you know, we're over that. Remember, we've already known what that feels like and it's not pleasurable for us anymore. So let's go this way. Like reassign that part of you to something that it feels comfortable with doing for the whole, you know, the whole's goal. The whole's goal. Accept fully that they've been a vital part of the learning and growth experience, since growth is needed for survival and a vital part of survival even. And so this process of that, even that defiant part was helping serve us and wants to serve us continuously, and must be shown that growth is a part of life, that we have to grow, and that it's time for that part to grow. And sometimes there are a little bit of uncomfortable feelings as we grow, but we still grow. Growth is needed for survival. And then love any feelings associated, like disappointment, like shame, like if that part of us feels shameful after it's going to give up its prideful stance and it says, oh, I'm sorry I made us wait so long, or, you know, it's like, oh, it's okay. I love you anyway. You can be with me anyway, even though you feel that shame. You're lovable. Like all parts of us have to be loved on the way out this door and welcome to be with us. We're not leaving any anchors behind in this overlay. And sometimes feelings that we've been avoiding feeling will be the things that we're going to need to love. And this may call for an invitation to those feelings, perhaps even a formal one in some cases, right? Like, are there any feelings here that would like to show themselves, or gentle one, like, oh, I know that it's been hard to try to, you know, show yourself that feeling, but I'm willing to be the soft container for myself through that feeling. Whatever you need in those moments, right? Different feelings will need different things from us. The feeling must have presence. Having been the one who can love that feeling and love self through that feeling, it will no longer snag us into or anchor us into the overlay. That overlay will be integrated and not operating as its own mechanism any longer. If we can be present with all parts of the overlay, then we can be present when the circumstances that used to elicit that overlay arise. So the environment, we come up into that place where usually when we see that, we are elicited to smoke a cigarette. And now when we pass that, it's like, no, I actually don't have that same sensation anymore. I feel whole and complete, and I'm present with the fact that I'm passing by that marker. You know, we're not automatically slipping into that filtered view and all the supporting voices and ideas and stories we had in that room. We've escaped it, and it's integrated into us as a piece of wisdom and discernment for our navigation of the world in a present state. Like, we now have a map through that overlay and have escaped the room, so to speak. We can pass through that terrain easily now, and that terrain may never be needed again. So an operating system with supporting parts might be helpful, perhaps one that does the escape technique and one that navigates Earth by being present, listening to highest self for answers and directions, and is led by curiosity and inner urge. Right? When we're in presence, the curiosity or the impetus to act will come in the moment. And we use our discernment of all the things that we've integrated to navigate that. But it's not an overlay misguiding us. It's much more pure guidance from our highest version of self, which can see the biggest picture view. So it's like you're driving along and you're present, and then like your inner urge is to go right. But your logic and your just says, well, I remember there were potholes on this street before and I hadn't been taking that way for that reason. But your inner urge said go right. So you follow your inner urge because you're present and you don't have an overlay. You're not automatically slipping into some coping mechanism that you just devised to avoid the potholes anymore. Now you're able to navigate the street and, oh, there's no more potholes. They've fixed them. I was taking an extra 10-minute trip just to avoid potholes and now they're not even here. My inner urge guided me towards taking that experience again from a different level, obviously. You know? The threat is no longer there. I would have been living in that overlay for no reason and kind of like wasting my time in a way, right? Because it was no longer relevant to me. Okay. So you can replace the old overlay with a navigating system that is led by curiosity, inner urge, being present, has healthy self-esteem and self-care and responsibility, right? Because we still want to navigate life. And once we've escaped enough of those overlays, what I found is after having escaped enough of the overlays, there wasn't a lot of like, it was just peace. It was just joy and peace and in the moment. But there was part of me that was like, well, I kind of like to have some rules about how to navigate this. And for me, at this time, at least at this stage, I think it's a helpful thing. I don't know if it'll always be that way. I may come back to a point where I'm more comfortable being in the present without a set of rules. But if I was going to have a set of rules, an overlay, I would want to make one that has, you know, healthy self-esteem, that has a good self-care and takes responsibility, and is allowing for that inner urge, right? So I make a structure that allows the inner urge and the curiosity to lead me, so that it's already in my navigation system, that I'm not cutting out the most important part, which is that my divine connection to my highest version self, which is helping me helping me move forward on this journey of life and grow and learn. Okay. So I believe that a way that we can tap in this new operating system, or program in this new operating system, is through tapping. Perhaps instead of just escaping the rooms, there's a way to build self a ladder, a boat, a kite, on the way out, implementing the new system as the old one is escaped. So this could be like a graduating room, right? Instead of stepping out into the unknown, we step out into this new navigating system. And then that prepares us for stepping out into the unknown at the appropriate time. So, like I said, these parts of what I'm expressing now with this, especially with this third concept of a new overlay to navigate in, this is experimental completely for me. Since I haven't done it yet, I don't know the effects of it. It's an idea that I'm sharing because I think it'll be interesting to try. Otherwise, there's a nothingness and no impetus to act or risk being engaged in drama with those around us. Oh, so if we're in that nothingness space and there's not a lot of structure, oh, okay. Here's a good way to frame it. So in this third overlay that I'm talking about, the idea of having good self-esteem, good self-care, taking responsibility, but while allowing the curiosity and the intuitive prompts to lead us, what that overlay actually is a set of agreements or boundaries, right? Like I'm willing to engage in life on these terms with certain people and certain experiences, right? Because those are developed through our discernment. So meaning I'm not going to go into a situation where I know everybody's going to like project onto me and treat me bad because I'm in presence. And that's because part of my navigation system, part of the new system that I'm operating in, is very much based on self-care. So it would be uncaring to myself to put myself in those situations, you see? Okay. If a new system is not in place, is there a risk of not continuing life? You know, it's this like, you have the vision of the enlightened being sitting cross-legged, you know, just silently and still. And they're not actually, you know, they're doing a beautiful navigation of their inner world, of energy, of the of consciousness. That's all nice, but we are in human bodies. So it's also nice that we get to live, that we get to taste things, that we get to have that sensation of adrenaline or hugs, you know? Like I have tears come to my eyes when I say this, because like we are here for living and having those experiences. And I had one experience one time where I popped out of my body. So I was just in my energetic essence at that time, and I could see my body. And I can tell you that the room was in sepia tones. And when I popped back into my body, I could clearly see the contrast of what it is to be in a human body, and how beautiful it is, and how vibrant and lovely these vessels are as interpreters of energy. And so if we have the opportunity to interpret energy through the human body and experiences that we have on Earth with the environment we're having, what a wonderful thing if we can eliminate the overlays in order to be present with that. Create ultimately like a permeable overlay that allows us to experience life in presence, but also does not put us into situations where it wouldn't be self-loving to do so. So ultimately that last part of the experiment is what I have been working on in myself, and I hadn't had the words to kind of describe it yet until I had those words to describe the first part in this way. And then it would just kind of all came to this place where I was like, yes, this is true, this is right. And the emotion that I felt in those moments where I was kind of closing down the explanation just affirmed for me that I'm definitely on the right track. And so I'm happy to share this with you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for considering me as someone who could assist you. If you find that I am someone who can assist you, please get in touch through my website. You can book a session. And what I'm offering is just information to reflect on. So it's important that you make it your own in some way, whether you just try it on as an experiment so that you can navigate and find out what it is like, so that you can apply it to your own beliefs and thoughts. Maybe you suspend your own beliefs in order to try it. Whatever works for you is how you should utilize this information, right? And even if seeing me say this says to you, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with anyone who's doing that, and I'll go in the other direction. That's great too. You know, like whatever, whatever, in whatever way it serves you is how you should utilize it. Absolutely. So I'm pretty excited. Happy for this part of my journey, and looking forward to letting go of the overlays that I still had operating in me, which were keeping me from finding like-minded souls and really wanting to invest in other people, because I had overlays still from like, you know, it hasn't been easy to be the odd one, you know, the one that was thinking outside the box no matter what, because my brain just worked that way. Even if someone says something, even if they're in a spiritual journey like me and usually talking about things that I understand fully, I will still think the opposite of what they have said, just as an experiment of thought. My mind just wants to like look at all the angles of things and analyze, and it has caused me to be out of the box for much of my life. And then to be in social situations and be like that was challenging because I really needed to build up my self-esteem before it was okay for me to admit and know that I'm not for everyone. You know, that some people are going to be annoyed by that. And it's okay. And it doesn't mean anything about me or my worth. It just means that we're not growing at the same pace or in the same direction at this time. That's all. Some people might want to tear me down because I'm an example to them that they don't want to see. You know, I'm not going to succumb to any tearing downs, but I'm certainly not going to let that mean anything about my worth. I really needed to come to that because I had an overlay from childhood dealing with my own father, who was generally suffering from a lot of his own overlays or coping mechanisms having to do with being abused. And when somebody has been really abused, they're in a traumatized state, and they're usually not able to look outside themselves to care about what somebody else needs or wants, right? And to grow up in a situation where it's your parent that's like that is a difficult thing as a child, but only because of the overlay that it creates. You know, I survived. I had everything I needed. But the stories that I told myself were horror. They were horror stories, right? So it's nice to let go and escape those stories and step out the door to realize that I'm a whole being who knows how to navigate those things and who can help anyone else out who sees that I can help them too. So thank you for your time once again. I've rambled on even past my thanking you for the first time, so I appreciate your interest in growth and learning and stepping out of the box.